So today we're gonna start with demonstrating how to make both a two-way table and how to make a pie chart in R. So the first thing is that when we do things in R, sometimes we are going to do stuff that's a little bit more complex and requires what are called libraries. And so to make the pie chart today, we're going to require a package or a library that's called ggplot2. So if you've never downloaded this before, it's really important that you would go to Tools, Install Packages, and then here you would type in the packages ggplot2, and you would go ahead and select this and you would hit Install. When you do that, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff happen on your console. I'm not going to click install because I've already done it, but when you click install, a whole bunch of stuff will run on your console. Let that go. And once it's done, you can proceed with the next step. So again, you'll probably hit install. So just because you've installed the library doesn't mean that it's active in this script. So we'll type library ggplot2 at the top of our script just to make sure that ggplot2 is loaded. So when I run that line, which again, control enter, not just enter, you'll see it runs down here. This gives me a good sign that ggplot2 is loaded. Remember, the next thing you do is set your working directory to wherever your data is. So my data is located in a long sort of directory. So wherever your files are, so again, my files are in this folder, and in this folder, what I can do, so I'm working on this Penguins data set. So what I can do is I can grab the string, which is the file or the directory up here, and I can paste it. And so you'll see this is almost the exact same thing here that I put in quotes, but you'll see that the slashes are just the other way because that's how R wants them. So I'll go ahead and set the working directory, and I'll load in the Penguins data. So to load in the Penguins data, again, I'll just make a comment so you remember that's what I'm doing. Penguins data, what you'll do is you'll use the read CSV function, and you need to tell it what the name of your CSV file is. Remember, don't forget to include that .csv. And because I want those strings, so if I just load this data real quick, right? When I load this data, remember we get the column length, column depth, flipper length, body mass, right? Those are all numbers or integers. But these categorical variables like sex, which are either male or female, the island or the species of the penguins, those are represented as characters right now. But for our analysis, it's usually helpful to have them as what are called factors. So in previous videos, I showed you how to convert those to factors. Another thing you can do is right here in this line is you can type strings as factors and say true, all caps. And you'll see if I run that line again, when I load it, it'll go ahead and load these as factors. So that can be helpful for you. So let's start with how do we make a two-way table? So a two-way table, the way to do that is just to say table. And what you're going to do is you're going to list the two columns that you're interested in. So let's say that I'm interested in species and sex, right? Those are two categorical variables. So what you'll do is you'll take your data and you'll say, I'm interested in the species. And then you'll take your data again, so penguins data, and say you're interested in the sex. So if I run that, you'll see that it'll make a little table for me. So this is your two-way table. You've got female and you've got male. You've got the three kinds of penguin species, and you've got the counts of each of the penguins. So this is your two-way table. It doesn't include totals automatically for you. So, you would want to include those yourself. But this is one way, this is one way to get a two-way table. Another thing you might be interested in doing is getting this as proportions instead of just, raw numbers. So if you do prop.table and then, take this line that you had before and stick that inside, it'll do essentially the same thing, right? But this time it'll return proportions instead of reporting the raw numbers. Okay. So one way we could get those totals, if we wanted the totals, is we could use a function called add margins. So if we type add margins, and then put our table inside there. So again, I'm going to go up here, take this table, the whole line actually. Side add margins. What you'll see is that'll kind of make the two-way table of totals. So that way you can already have the totals all the way there. So you can see we have 333 penguins in. So that's a nice option to have. So those are your two-way tables. So the next thing I want to show you is how to make a pie chart. So to make a pie chart, so we're going to create a pie chart. It's going to look a little complicated. Okay, so and I won't explain how we do everything here. But the first thing to do is we'll make a table that holds some information for our pie chart. So let's say we want to make a pie chart for species. And so, right, pie charts, you pick one categorical variable. So let's say we take the penguins data and we're interested in the species. So this pie data, what I'm seeing, notice I'm storing this table, right? So if I ask for what is pie data, what it's doing is it's saying, well, I have 146 Adélie penguins, 68 chinstrap, 119 Gentoo penguins. What I want to do for my pie chart is I want to be able to specify these sorts of, I want to kind of separate what these names are, and I want to separate their numbers. And so I'll put those in a little data frame, kind of its own data. And so I'll call that pie df, df standing for data frame. And so I'll say data.frame, and in there I'm going to put the species, which are just the names from that pie data. And then I will also put the percentage, and the percentages will just be as.numeric, and then I actually need to calculate the percentages. Okay, so I need to calculate some percentages. Now, if I run this right now, I'll have a problem, right? Because I haven't told R what the percentages are. So, right, 146, 68, 119, those aren't percentages, those are raw counts. So one thing I can do is I can make percentages, and the percentages will just be taking these parts of my pie data, so the 146, 68, 119, dividing that by the total. So if I added up the pie data, and then multiplying that by 100. So that'll make a percentage. Now, I would like to round these percentages, to maybe 2 decimal places. So I'll put round, comma 2 around that. So again, we've already seen what pie data looks like. Let me show you what percentages looks like. So if I run that percentages line, you'll see now what we've got is 43.84% are Adélie penguins, 20.42 are chinstrap, and 65.74. And so basically what this data frame thing is going to do, this pie df that I just made, it's going to basically just kind of rotate this so that we've got species as one column, percentage as another column. And so we've got Adélie, chinstrap, and Gentoo. I've got their percentages here. So that's what I've really made. And that's what I need, or what I want to use to make my pie chart, right? I know that Adélie should have a pie slice that's 43.84% of the whole pie. Okay, so how do we make this pie chart? Well, inside of R, we're going to use this ggplot2 function. And it's a little complicated as to how it works. So I'm going to bring over kind of a chunk of code that I've kind of pre-made, and then I'll explain kind of what's happening in it. Okay, so this, when I drop it here, it's going to look terrifying, right? Because it's this whole thing at once. But maybe let me just explain it. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, I'm making my pie chart, or you could still call it a pie graph. And I'm going to use ggplot, my function, to do that. And the information that I have is pie df. That's where this information is stored. Now, when I'm going to make this pie chart, you want to specify what's called an aesthetic in ggplot. And so you have to give it what goes on the x-axis, what goes on the y-axis, and maybe what the color is, right? You can put other things here. But when you're thinking about a pie chart, there's really not an x-axis to it, right? So when I say x, I'm just going to leave it empty with these quotes. In terms of y, or how tall or wide these bar chart, the pie graph should be, the answer there is the percentage. And the color, or sort of, the piece of the pie chart, that's going to depend on the species. So I need to fill in those things that I'm interested in there. So If you're working on a different example, you'll probably still leave percentage here because that dictates how wide the pie chart is for each slice. But whatever categorical variable you're interested in, right? Whether it be species or maybe if you're interested in an island, right? That would change both down here and that would change up here, right? Whatever you're interested in. The next thing I do is I just make kind of the bars that are going into this pie chart, and then I make them kind of go in a circle. So again, I don't have time to really get into the depth of what these individual lines are doing, but just to give you an idea. This next line, what it does is it go ahead and labels my axes. So it'll label my slices with species names. So again, it'll label them for me to see. So this is somewhere else you would update if you're doing something other than species. And then what it's going to do is it's going to put on a little label so I can see that. It's going to say the word species and percentage. And then what it's going to do is it's going to fill, okay, it's going to fill basically the labels. So the Udele, the Chinstrap, and Gentoo with the species name, with a parentheses, and then the percentage. And so if I run this all, okay, run all that, and then I hit print pie chart, you're going to see that show up. So you're going to see the pie chart over here. You're going to see, right, the slices sizes are dictated by how common or the percentage that each species is. You're going to see that there's a label on each of these, right? That's happening from this line right here where I'm labeling each species. You're going to see another label show up here, species and percentage over here on the right. And then you're going to see this format of species, parentheses, percentage, parentheses. And that's what this is saying. This is saying I want the species, parentheses, percentage, end parentheses. The other thing that I have is this theme void. Don't worry too much about what that does. And then I actually print the pie chart so you can see it. And then the last thing to do is to save the pie chart. So I have this line GG save, and I give it the name that I want my file to be. So I say species pie chart.png. I tell it the name of the pie chart, right? So I'm saying, hey, save this object. And I'm also telling it the size that I want it to save. So, this will just make it reproducible. So if I go up here and look at the species pie chart, it loads on another screen, but I can bring it up here, right? So it produces it. It has a void background, so it's a little hard to see against the black. But when you put this against a white background, it'll be much easier to see. And then, you could change the size of this if you wanted to. So that's how you make a pie chart. And you can do a really similar thing for a bar chart. So I'll show you how to make a bar chart. So if you want to create a bar chart, again, it's a very similar process. So let me bring over some code. Okay, so that I've already made this. And again, this might look really scary to start, but you'll see that it ends up operating really, really similar. So for the bar chart, what I'm saying is use ggplot again to make a bar chart. The data that I'm interested in. Okay, so for bar charts, you don't need to make this little summary data frame like I did for the pie chart. Okay, for bar charts, you can just hop right into your regular data. You have to tell it, again, your aesthetics, what goes on the x-axis, what goes on the y-axis. So I'm telling it on the x-axis of a bar chart is just the various species. Okay, so say x is going to be the species. Then I actually make the bar here, geom bar. And then what I do is I add some text to it. So I'm basically adding the count, basically how many of each species is there. And then what I do is I label the axes. So the x-axis will be labeled species, the y-axis will be labeled count. I put on a little theme to make the graph look pretty. And then on that theme, basically, I'm just adjusting the x and y axes so that the text size and how close the text is to the graph looks nice. Again, I print the bar chart and then I save it. So it's the same sort of process. If we take a second to look at what the bar chart looks like, you'll see here we've got the count axis on one axis, species on the other. You have the various species on the x-axis, right, like we specified. And then you have the counts here, right? These are the bars. So here you can see me making the bar. You can see the counts. Okay, so 146, 68, 119, those are there. So that's using this line where we say the statistic is the count, and I want you to map or have an aesthetic, which is the labeling, which is the count. So I want you to label the counts. That's what these are. And then I'm just moving them up a little bit. So if I don't move them up a little bit, this V-just vertically adjusts the labels to be up a tiny bit. Okay. So that's all this does. And again, you can, also do this stuff of saving, you should also save the bar chart so that actually hangs out. And sometimes you'll get messages like this. Okay, this is a warning message. This isn't an error message. This is just saying the way that I specified this label as the count, okay, used to be done this way, but it's going away. And so they want us to use after count, after stat, parentheses count instead. So what you can do is you can go up to where I had count there, right? I had count there before, and you can just put in after stat. You can run this same line, right? It'll still make your bar chart, and now you don't even get the warning. So, sometimes those messages are helpful, but not necessary. And again, when you save this, it'll save in that same directory. So if I pull up my directory, you can see the bar chart got made here, and I can open it up, and there's my bar chart figure.